all of you cute beans out there, and welcome to the stream. I am Razim, and this is Console Shop Simulator, where we are going to just have some fun and relax, and not think about the fact that I still have to finish my taxes despite spending so many hours on them yesterday. Also, we're using the TF Talkie, so transform me to your heart's content, everyone.
It amuses me greatly that, like, Lightpaw just made the slightest reference to Discworld, and now is like, oh, I know what you're talking about.
Somebody bought 6
Sometimes
copies.
I wonder if I read too many books.
Probably.
6 copies of Call of Duty?
Yes. I am hoping that they are gifting them to other people. Oh. By just not doing them, Serio.
Oh, I was gonna say, to commit tax evasion, you add up the number of dots that you have to assemble your dice pool and then roll it, and if you have enough successes, then you evade taxes.
I love you.
I love you too? What'd I do?
Nothing. I just love you. That is all. This one wants 5 copies of this game.
It's just you said that with the tone of voice as if you were judging me for something.
No, definitely not.
I don't mind if you're judging me. I just want to know what you're judging me for. Sure, Lightpaw.
Duke.
You want that, do you? Bloop. Alright, so we already have all of this out here on the shelf. So these are gonna go back here. I ordered extras just to put on the online store. Um, what do you think you're doing? The fuck? Like, what just happened with that? The game is being weird.
Oh, Lightpaw got a little bit silly, I see. Unfortunately, Lightpaw, I have found a typo within your character sheet. Therefore, your entire character is invalidated.
Yes, Sirio. I did a lot of, I made a lot of custom games in this.
But wait, Ido, you hadn't seen the Fun with Potions game before?
Yeah. See, Ido? We got, you know, this is the cover. The, one of the first TF talkies. We got one of the, Pokemon TFs for the spine. And then you got, the lion art that Weirney did on the back, if I can rotate it. There we go. That's just, there we go. And then the inside, you got these two pieces.
Duke.
And then, of course, you can't forget this wonderful piece here on the Asher game. No, all of these are custom.
You know, you showed off the Asher art, but the Duke was covering it.
Oh. Well, here. Now it's on the screen again. I don't do this. I got lots of art. And I put it in all these different games.
Haboku does make a cute intro.
He does. But again, you know, he just makes it
Though I
cute
think it's all about the Ido Bolt right now.
The Ido Bolt is very good. You know, I could do that, Sirio.
Next stream project is just open up RPG Maker and then just start making these games.
Well, I was thinking Game Dev Tycoon. Though I will need a transparent form for that.
Joke.
Because unfortunately, I don't have that yet. It's been a while.
Okay, but seriously, do you not want me to talk about my audiobooks? Because if not, I'll drop it.
I mean, you can. It's more just a
You just
meme
seem
that
so
they're
concerned about it.
unhinged. Well, yes, I have reason to be concerned. But it is also a meme. Alright, I think we're gonna go ahead and open for the day. Of course, I gotta run over here and manually open this one. Hello! I do have that. And of course, I'm going to charge you extra for making me have to go over and get it. Oh, right, gotta go into the stream thing.
Bye.
Lipa, please put that in the, please put that in the, I think the feedback section. But either way, something like that is also, you know, the storyteller can deny anything that is added to a move. So, you know, you as storyteller should make sure your players are not trying to do something stupid like that.
There's the squeaky demons.
Bye-bye.
Oh, right, I gotta turn on the Twitch stuff. I guess that is clean.
So yeah, I started listening to The Wandering Inn.
Okay.
I brought it up, I think, over the weekend. I don't
Joke.
know if you remember anything about that.
Bye.
I don't know.
Okay, so it came up. I was talking about the longest fan fiction that has been written, which used to be a Super Smash Bros. Fan fiction.
Okay, I do remember you bringing that up.
Which, Yeah, which that's at 4.5 million words. For personal reference, to help put things in perspective, the Wheel of Time's word count is 4.4 million words. So the entirety of Wheel of Time, the 14 books plus its prequel, is 4.4 million words. The Wandering Inn is currently almost at 14 million words. So I started reading a thing that is the size of almost 3.5 Wheel of Times.
Why?
The word count for the entirety of Harry Potter is just a bit over 1 million words. So that serves as a solid benchmark. So getting into and reading through The Wandering Inn would be like reading Harry Potter cover to end, the entire series, 14 times over. And it's still in progress.
Finally.
It is currently being written to this day. Why, you ask? Because honestly, when you go through books as much as I do, you just start grabbing at whatever you possibly can. It's not an addiction, I promise.
Thank you.
Have you read through all of Dresden Files?
Yes.
Hmm.
And all of Discworld. So, you ask why, and here's the real answer. So, this last year I don't need an intervention demon. It's fine. Everything's fine. I can stop when I want to. Any moment. The real answer is that this book got on my radar. I guess I can't call it a book. This monstrosity got on my radar because over the past year, I've started getting more into lit RPGs as a genre.
Thank you.
So the short answer to what a lit RPG is it's a book that will take a lot of game elements and use that as part of its prose or literary design. So to take, for example, one of the more popular mainstream ones was Ready Player One, which one of the ways that this used RPG mechanics was, besides talking about video games and using video game mechanics as part of the plot point, there was stuff like chat interfaces and gold coins and in-game currency and stuff like that. It was a little bit soft compared to some of the more explicit lit RPGs out there, but Ready Player One was my first exposure to this genre. And I talked about it previously. I hate Ready Player One with a fervent passion. Like, I can make fun of that book for hours because it's amazing how badly written it is. I got more entertainment out of shitting on Ready Player One than I got out of who would use Sharpie on a CD. Are you serious?
Those were fingerprints.
Oh, okay. It looks like Sharpie to me. I got more enjoyment out of just how bad Ready Player One is than I got enjoyment out of the Twilight Saga, which is pretty impressive because at the time that Twilight was coming out and I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is the worst thing I've ever written. God, I wish I could go back to being that innocent.
Written? I didn't realize you wrote Twilight. I think we need to see other people.
It's Yeah, okay. So anyway,
You said it was the worst thing you've ever written.
I'm aware. I'm just
Huh.
going to move on. Because you know what I meant.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, over the last year, I've been getting into the genre a little bit more, and it started with
Thank you.
I checked out Dungeon Crawler Carl because that one's been getting very popular. And I really enjoy that one. I really want to share that one with you because I think you'll enjoy it. The humor is a little bit more crass, but it has kind of a similar energy to Dresden, though it's much more it's extremely crass.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Lightpaw. Lightpaw knows about DCC.
See you later.
So that reading that put the genre back on the radar for me. Whereas previously I had completely written it off that this genre would be horrible. Yeah, Lightpaw, that's the one I want to share with Zem, hopefully, at some point. Because it would also be a fun way for me to re-experience Dungeon Crawler Carl is the audio immersion tunnel. So the thing about Twilight is it's just bland and boring. Actually reading Twilight, this is your experience. You look at a page and it talks about how beautiful Edward is. You go to the next page and it talks about how beautiful Edward is. You turn the page and it talks about how beautiful Edward is. You go to the next page and it talks about, oh, how sad she is and how depressed she is. The highlight of Twilight in my mind, and I guess because this is a particular scene that sticks with me, is after like Edward and Bella have their first God, I hate the fact that I remember so much about Twilight. After Edward and Bella have their first like real fight, Edward like breaks into her car and takes out her radio just like entirely. Like he just rips it out. Because like Edward had gifted this this stereo to Bella as part of the car, and then like they had a fight. So then Edward goes in and just rips the whole stereo out, which was already stupid when I was a teenager and reading it. But now that I'm an adult and thinking back on it, I'm like, gee, this is really what a multiple 100-year creature is doing? Wow. Maybe humans are better than vampires. But so I've been going through a bunch of lit RPG books, and most of them have been very trashy. And here's where I'm going to get into a specific tangent that this is building up to. I have discovered what is my number one pet peeve in any writing whatsoever. I can forgive a lot of writing sins, but the thing that will turn me off from a book the most, more than anything, is if an author uses personification as a blunt weapon to beat over me and tell me exactly what they're intending the characters to be thinking. So, say you have a book that's following a limited third person perspective or a first person perspective. And what I mean by this is you're following a specific character and their thoughts and their actions, and you are not supposed to be privy to other people's thoughts or the reasons behind their action. You are only privy to what that character acknowledges and sees in other characters. But then the author will use personification to write things as an example sentence. And then the cat looked at me as if to say, so what are you going to do about it? And on one hand, you might be like, that's kind of a cat-like thing to do. But on the other hand, you are telling me explicitly what you are trying to convey about the cat's attitude, instead of implying it. And this is an immediate cardinal sin, because one of the most important things for good prose and good storytelling is to show, not tell. Obviously, you want to leave enough breadcrumbs that people can figure out what's going on, but actually just telling people outright what a cat is like intending to do with an action and making the main character just like voice that out is just the most obnoxious thing to me, and I cannot stand for it. And for some reason, a lot of the lit RPG books that I've been reading, including some of the most well-received ones within the space that actually follows these, I've been hearing that like constantly. Light Paul, I agree. So you can get away with it if the perspective character knows the other character / pet really well. I agree. But what I've discovered more than anything is that a lot of authors are using this as a crutch to signal the attitude or expression of another character. And I'm not even necessarily talking about this from the standpoint of non-sentient creatures. I've seen this occur in regards to other characters that should have the ability to speak. And it's kind of crazy because it almost feels like I'm reading bad fan fiction sometimes, and these are like actually legitimately published books that are sometimes often very well received. And I can see how they are well received, but I just can't get past this specific pet peeve. And it's getting to the point, especially lately, I run into it. It breaks my immersion with the book immediately, and I cannot get back into it because it's just become like this immediate red flag. Then I'm like, oh no, this author does not know how to write. Because whenever I hear this, I also start picking up on all other kinds of issues that the authors have. And it turns out there's a lot of really bad authors out there. So that entire tirade is to set up the fact that The Wandering Inn is not going to be for everyone. The Wandering Inn is very poorly written, but it does not do my pet peeve. And for some reason, I'm really enjoying The Wandering Inn.
Well, okay.
For some reason, I have listened to about 30 hours of the audiobook, which that puts me at about 300,000 words into the 14 million word behemoth. And it's good. I don't know what's wrong with my life that I'm reading this 14 million word book and I'm like, wow, this is good. But I say this with full recognition that this author is committing other cardinal sins that some people may have as their pet peeve. They're not... It doesn't bother me so much. Usually whenever I just hear some of these other issues that they have, it just kind of makes me laugh a little bit. But at least they're not beating me over the head with a blunt weapon, with the telling instead of showing. And Lightpaw, is there a line where it shifts like he gave me a dubious look? No. Like, I've just had this crazy bad streak with books where the word dubious would be too big for the author to use. Like, to put it in perspective, before I started The Wandering Inn, the last books that I was listening to were Wings of Fire. And Wings of Fire is a book series that's intended for children. It's written at like maybe an 8th grade level, if even that. I don't really know anymore because like I read so much, I forget what an 8th grade level actually looks like, but it's certainly not meant for it's not even young adult. It is absolutely children's novels. And I was reading it and I was like, wow, this is well written. What's wrong with the rest of the books that I'm reading? So, with all that said, full disclosure, The Wandering Inn is bad. At least at first. And quite frankly, there is a part of me that looks at the fact that it's 14 million words long, and I'm like, there is no way you can't cut out like 80% of that and still tell a compelling story. There are a lot of issues. But you know what? There's something about it that's just hitting right, and it's a very enjoyable read. Granted, some of the enjoyment is because I'm just listening to it and I'm like, wow, this is bad. Ha 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 ha. Which, in my eyes, is also kind of a victory because I've just been listening to a lot of, wow, that's bad, and I'm bored and depressed. So at least I can laugh at it. Here's the premise of The Wandering Inn. You're following the character Erin Solstice, who has suddenly been transported to another world. She was trying to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. She turned a corner, and then she was just in a fantasy world. She literally got isekai'd trying to go to the toilet. And it is a lit RPG series, and it is very aware of a lot of these modern things like isekai. As the story progresses, it becomes more and more clear that it's falling back on a lot of isekai tropes. Who hasn't been isekai to another world trying to go to the bathroom at 1 a.m. in the morning? Haven't we all experienced that at one time or another? Do you have anything you need to say, Zim, before I continue on?
No, by all means, carry on.
I feel like you're judging me.
That is all in your head.
Uh-huh. Okay, so we're following Erin Solstice, who has just been isekai'd into into a fantasy world. And the start of the book, and it goes pretty swiftly. The start of the book is that she's being chased by a bunch of goblins and comes across a decrepit, abandoned inn that's just oddly placed on a hill in the countryside. There's nothing else around it. It's just there. So she goes in there and she decides that she's just going to start cleaning it up a little bit. Which is actually very valid because she was stress cleaning. And this is one of the things that, like, this immediately kind of got me. This was like, I don't know, 20 minutes into it. She starts stress cleaning it, which is already very interesting character development, more than a lot of the other books that I've been reading. And I feel like this is supposed to be a low bar, but the fact that she already has the kind of characterization that she's under a stressful situation and as a result she wants to start cleaning, I'll be honest, I vibe with that. I do that too. Sometimes if I am feeling down and depressed, I'm just like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna start cleaning. But she starts cleaning this old, decrepit, abandoned inn in the middle of nowhere. And then she unlocks the class Innkeeper. And the way this works is that there's just this system voice that pops into her head that says, you have unlocked class Innkeeper, level 1. Or something like that. Here's where it gets wacky. The next 8 hours of the audiobook. And I want to go back and re-listen to this because I don't know what happened. I feel like I was in just like this space-time paradox, but it took 8 hours. And here's what Erin accomplished. She left the inn. She found a tree with mysterious blue fruit. She got the fruit down. And she went back to the inn. That is it. It took 8 hours to get that far.
So it's essentially one of our tabletops.
Yes, and I swear it was only a couple of days that I was listening to this, and at the time I was following along and I was like, yeah, this is taking a while, but I feel like something's happening. But then I'm looking back at it and I'm like, all she did was go out, hit a tree, get some fruit, and go back to the end. And I just, my brain can't wrap its head around, like, what actually happened here. It really is just like Lost in Chaos, now that you pointed out. But so, like, one particular thing that I do explicitly remember is there was a point where she was starting to get dehydrated. She was thirsty, she was getting dehydrated, she wanted something to drink. So she was very delirious and started just like walking out. I don't know if this was part of her getting the blue fruit or if it was slightly after or if it was before. But at some point, she went out and she was looking for some form of liquid substance. And I swear to God, there was like this 20-minute monologue that she had about how desperately she wants even a Coke or a Pepsi. Sorry, no, wait, it was a Pepsi, but she will even take a Coke if she had to. Or how much she would like a Gatorade. I mean, hell, maybe she would just take all three. A Pepsi Coke-Garade? A Coke Gator Pepsi? This is part of the book. And it took like 20 minutes to get past this. Molly, you're always thirsty. So, like, I don't know. It was weird and wacky trying to get through this. And Sergs, if I was stuck in a fantasy world, I'd really want some creature comforts too. I fully understand that. But at the same time, the thing is, it was something that took like 20 minutes to get through. And this definitely contributes to why it took 8 hours to accomplish the task of going outside, getting some fruit, and coming back inside. And, like, on one hand, spending all that time, even though there were a lot of times where I was laughing at how it was kind of poorly written, it did provide a substantial amount of character development. But on the other hand, it was kind of like, oh god, I just remembered. It was kind of like listening to a toddler learn and grow and experience a world. So there's a point where, so after she found a stream and she has drinking water, she goes in there and she takes a bath, and then this strange, crazy big fish tries to eat her. So she baits it out of the stream, and then it just like it gets stuck on the it just gets stuck on the grass, and it eventually suffocates. So she takes it to the inn because she wants fish food, you know, like Mala. And she finds a knife, and this 20-year-old lady is just like, she looks at the knife, and then she looks at the fish, and then she looks at the knife, and then she looks at the fish, and then she starts trying to cut the fish, and she was like, oh, this is very tough. So she tries to cut the fish even harder and even harder, and then she cuts herself. And then she goes into a manic delirious state because she's now losing blood. She passes out after she wraps up her hands with old curtains or something to make a makeshift bandage, and she passes out. And then she wakes up and she's like, what's that smell coming from the kitchen? I better go check what that smell is. Oh, it's the fish I left there, half chopped up, decaying.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. The first 10 hours is just something special. I don't know. But then at some point, the author starts like the author starts finally introducing other characters. So it's not just Aaron being a toddler and almost dying constantly. So we're like several hours in, other characters start getting introduced, and Aaron starts being able to interact with and play off of other characters, and things start really shining. The dialogue between characters is surprisingly adept, and I think this is where like it's really going to start shining. There's a lot of sins in how this author is writing. There's a lot of actual bad writing, but the pure characterization, I am invested into many of these characters already. And the best part is, since I've already identified that right now they're not a great writer, but I suppose in the future they might become a very competent writer at some point within this 14 million word journey I'm going on. Things are going to get really good. But for example, there's a mage character, specifically a necromancer, who is very snobbish and stuck up, but also he's literally wearing rags and is in poverty, even though, despite the fact that he commands great magical prowess, supposedly. He's always talking about how he's such a wonderful and powerful mage, but he's relying on the generosity of Aaron to provide him food, which, up to this point, is just blue fruit. But he's relying on Aaron's generosity, which is confusing because, like, if Aaron can get this fruit from the tree, then this wizard could get this fruit from the tree, because the wizard is like 50 times more competent than Aaron. but we're just going to ignore that in particular. There's a point where Aaron is being attacked by a swarm of acid flies. And this snobbish, stuck-up mage, who has otherwise been very cold and unfriendly to Aaron, shows up and saves Aaron using actual magic. Which, mind you, at this point, 4 hours listening to him bluster about what a wonderful wizard he is, I'm just assuming he doesn't have any magical capabilities. Turns out he does. Turns out he can actually cast magic, and he's actually kind of good at it. But he casts what is, in his words, a beginner spell that is not suitable for combat. And he casts it in a combat situation. And I distinctly remember this because I got very intrigued by this, but he was described as being very flushed and surprised, and he was staring at his hands in such utter confusion about the fact that he cast this beginner spell and used it in a combat scenario. And of course, this is from Aaron's perspective, so we're only getting part of this. We're just only getting the implications of this kind of thing. And Aaron is totally oblivious to anything whatsoever, except for, I guess, the existence of blue fruit. But internally, this leaves me wondering, so this wizard can actually cast spells. Why is he shocked that he's casting a beginner level spell and using it in a combat situation? He's snobbish, but supposedly very well learned. He has read a lot of books. He knows a lot of things. Surely at some point he would have the consideration that maybe beginner spells can be very flexible. So what's this about? Why is he confused and shocked about this? He's actually a spellcaster. And this doesn't get explained. And there's two things that could happen here. Either this is going to set up very important character development for this wizard character later on, you know, some 200, 300,000 hours down the line. Or this is just completely forgotten by the author and it meant nothing. And oh boy, I'm so excited for the answer. Maybe he's never been in combat? No. I don't have the timeline directly certain in my mind, but he does get into quite a substantial scuffle with a couple of guards at one point. And I think this happens before the acid fly incident, and he's surprisingly capable within a battle situation. And, well, I guess I would say this is spoilers, because this only really comes up like 250,000 words in, so it's like 800 pages into it. But we're only scratching the surface here. It turns out he is actually a very powerful... He's literally a genius wizard. There's not very many others that would be capable of rivaling his magical prowess. Except... he's a necromancer, and people don't look kindly upon necromancers. So that's why he's like just like out living in rags and committing crimes and stuff. But even then, that still confuses me about like there's still the potential explanation that something interesting is going on with what happened with that spell. And I am just so thrilled to be along for the ride that either this is meaningless and I'm picking up on absolute bullcrap, or it's going to become relevant 5 million words down the line. Now imagine that with all of the characters that have been showing up, because the characters are actually pretty interestingly written, which is crazy. One of the things that I've really been enjoying is that After a while, after we really get Aaron settled, we introduce another main character. And from time to time, we will have a couple of chapters that follow Ryoka, who is a runner. She was also isekai'd into the world, and all she does is run. She really loves running. And because of the world, she's now a little bit more capable of running more like constantly and defying human limitations. And her story is very interesting because it's a pretty surprising contrast to Aaron's story. So Aaron is a bumbling idiot, but she has been very lucky, and despite getting into what should have been deadly situations, she's kind of getting out of them without much pain. Ryoka, on the other hand, is extremely competent, and because of her competence, she's getting stuck into political games within the Runners Guild. Runners being people who deliver packages. They're basically couriers. They just have the class runner, and they're really good at running. And one of the things that's just slowly building up as we go through this, the people that have been isekai'd with the knowledge of the world as we have it now, where we understand a lot of techniques and a lot of things that provide a sort of soft power for us. So, for example, in the case of running, we've learned over the course of a lot of competition and a lot of science proper posture and proper training and things like that. We've really boiled it down to a very exact science. But in this fantasy world, they're missing a lot of that knowledge and a lot of that information, especially because it turns out the system is kind of accidentally limiting creatures by providing these skills. So a lot of the people in this world use the system as a crutch. So runners with the runner class are good at running only insofar that the skill allows them. But they don't actually have good posture. They don't actually have good diet. They're basically doing everything to make their abilities worse and are just carried by the system. So when you have someone like Ryoka who knows what's going on with the system, it gets very powerful for her. And she gets into very bad situations and struggles a lot as well. And despite the fact that this is supposed to be cozy fantasy, there are some very surprising stakes being put at. She gets into a situation where a very highly ranked political person discovers that she's lying about being from the fantasy world. So this political person really wants to get the information about the world that Ryoka's from, mostly from curiosity. But Ryoka's thinking, damn, I remember a lot from AP chemistry. I don't want to teach these people how to create actual nuclear armaments. So she gets in this situation where she has to try and evade someone that has a skill that can detect if she's lying. But this person that has a skill that can detect that she's lying is the only way to fix a particularly substantial problem core to her character. It's actually really compelling writing. I was not expecting this when I started reading this. I was expecting slop.
I am glad you're enjoying it.
So do you want me to start talking about the unhinged parts now?
No, thank you.
So Aaron as Aaron starts developing a lot of people as part of her community, Aaron is basically stuck on the side of the world that has all of the all of the non-human humanoid races. So Aaron's a human, but very frequently we're talking about characters that are ant people, or gnolls, or lizard people, or goblins. So gnolls and lizard people come up quite frequently. And for some reason, and this is like I don't know if you know what r/min writing women is, but basically there's kind of this online joke about whenever a guy is writing women, especially when it comes to things that are of a more sexual nature, the men are just like totally brain dead when it comes to how anything works whatsoever, or or just has no sense of decorum. So I don't know what led the author to do this. I don't know why anyone on Earth would think this would make for a good part of a story. I don't know why I listened to this. Actually, I do know why. It was hilarious. There was a chapter about Aaron's first period ever since coming to this world. This world, of course, not having suitable toiletries for such a biological phenomenon. And Aaron being stuck in the quote-unquote monster half of the world, gnolls and lizard people don't have this particular monthly issue. It's decidedly just a woman thing. And in the fashion of this being an extremely long-winded book, this chapter took forever to get through. I think it was like 40 minutes of talking about, you know, female reproductive functionality, we'll say. Aaron goes to the market.
Bye-bye.
And is talking to a gnoll shopkeeper that she has befriended. And is trying to explain to this gnoll how human biology works, to try and explain to a creature that doesn't understand modern technology what she needs a tampon for. And there was a point where, like, I was already just confused and surprised that anyone would think this chapter would be fascinating storytelling. But then the truth hits, and the author just has Aaron scream out in a public, crowded marketplace about 50 euphemisms for having a period.
Bye.
It was like this guy just opened up Urban Dictionary and found all of the slang words to refer to this, and had Aaron shout it out in a crowded marketplace.
Okay.
It has absolutely been the most confusing experience of this novel so
Bye-bye.
far.
Oh. Huh.
But you know what? I learned a lot of fun euphemisms.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
Thank you, darling.
All right, one last thing and then I'm done talking about this. So it's pretty well known that the early parts of
Bye-bye.
this series is not as well written. So it's currently going through a rewrite, at least the early parts. And when I was looking up the word count and looking at some stats,
Huh.
I found out that the rewrite for the first book has made the book longer.
Uh-huh. Thank you. See you later.
I think I am not listening to the rewrite version.
Okay.
So this fanfic has an
So I'm
audiobook?
fascinated. Yes, it's not a fanfic. It's actually
Oh.
the Vor Mimic book was published, Zim.
Uh-huh. Huh. Huh.
So do you want to start listening to it, Zim?
No.
Huh.
Why not?
Huh.
Because I'm already getting the entire plot from you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
That is impossible. I am trying to summarize 31 hours of listening to The Wandering Inn in about 1 hour. There's a lot of plot that I have glossed over.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Okay.
Oh.
So any questions? Comments, concerns?
Huh.
Many concerns. But I'm just playing my game.
Okay. Mhm. Mhm. Uh-huh.
Bye.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, like I won't deny that it's very poorly written at times. And one of the things that it does catch me sometimes, the author will just very suddenly switch perspectives.
Thank you,
And
darling.
not even like switching perspectives between characters.
Okay.
What the author will do is will be following the perspective of Aaron in a third person limited perspective. And then just very suddenly
Bye-bye.
we'll switch to an omniscient third person perspective where we're referring to Aaron as the girl.
Hello, Era.
Huh.
Oh, Era's here. I should restart from the beginning so Era can hear about the audiobook I'm listening to.
Whatever makes you happy, dear.
Huh.
Are you sure you're not judging me?
Bye.
I have said multiple times I am judging you.
Oh, okay, good.
Hi, Vari.
Uh-huh.
Pat the Ido.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, darling.
I will say on a bigger thing though, not just specifically with this book, but one thing that I'm really noticing with a lot of modern writers is there's a very serious problem where everyone's trying to write as if their book's an anime. And I just strongly do not think that this works for literature.
Thank you, darling.
I understand that people want to have those cool anime scenes, but trying to suggest that kind of camera work within a written setting
Uh-huh.
is mostly just jarring, in my opinion.
See you later.
Huh. Oh. Hmm. Huh.
Bye-bye.
Finally.
I mean, a lot of people are into anime, so they're going to write based with inspiration from their what they like. I don't think I ordered enough of those today.
Mm-hmm.
I'd hoped I did,
Thank you.
but I appear to have not.
Huh.
Anime and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race.
Okay.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I will listen, if you want me to beta read things, I will happily beta read things. Oh, bye, Era. Sorry, I scared you away.
Thank you very much.
See you later, Era.
Yes,
I
Gabby,
get that.
in more defined
Huh.
in more defined
you.
author groups, alpha reading is a thing.
Hmm. Huh. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Wow.
Beta reading is usually done during or part of the final editing process, or just a bit before. The idea with beta reading is to catch details like if particular scenes that are supposed to be impactful are impactful in the correct way, or if the flow of the book appealed to the readers. Do unfinished in-progress fanfics count as early access? Well, The Wandering Inn is being released serially on a weekly basis, so I guess by that logic, that would be early access. I want to go back to this anime thing though. Like I do understand that people can be into anime. I am into anime. I have watched many animes. I have discovered with some amount of despair I am what some people would call a weeb. The problem I experience is there's kind of there's just this thing that I identify with a lot of unexperienced writers where they're trying to make anime scenes and they're trying to write it out. And like, it's not like it's necessarily such a bad thing, but they're utilizing certain things that don't translate well to literature. So like, for example, in an anime, you can have camera work that carries a lot of momentum and perspective and will smoothly transition perspectives. So in that sense, you can jump from one person's perspective to another person's perspective and back again, and it feel very smooth and fluid. In literature, you're trying to immerse us in this very specific perspective, usually a limited third person or first person perspective. So we're trying to get into the headspace of one specific character. And if you're constantly yanking us back and forth between multiple characters, then you're just disrupting that flow. And it weakens the prose overall. Because one of the benefits of literature that you cannot have in any other medium without it being full of shit is you get a really solid, intimate sense of what's going on internally for the characters. That's one of the reasons why movie adaptations always feel like they fall short of books. It's because books let you get so intimate with the character. With books, you can spend pages on things that happen in just a couple of seconds, and you will never be able to capture that sort of validity within a movie. Like, maybe you can catch it in a comic, but comic is just sort of a graphical form of literature anyway. The fact that you can like really pause and manipulate time, it's just not something that is as fluid within movie telling or animation. You can still do it and it still can be effective, but you have to do it in a very specific and careful way. Like these are just two methods of storytelling that have very distinct perks. And I think going both ways, a lot of people miss that. A lot of people miss that when they are trying to look at an adaptation, and they don't take it at the value that some things ultimately do have to be adapted, no matter how faithful we get. And they also don't really appreciate what it's like to try and write something that is inspired by anime, but actually works as literature. Yeah, like what Lightpaw said, an establishing shot within animation or movie or camera work, like the amount of things that you can suggest just with subtle camera work is insane. And you don't get that with storytelling, or rather, you don't get that with literature. So like I know it sounds like I'm saying obvious things, but there's a lot of authors out there that are trying really, really hard to make something that should just be a different genre. And I especially feel this very frequently with video games, where people are making a video game because video games are hot and awesome and so cool. But they should have just made a book. Or they should have just made a movie. Recently, they definitely should have just made a movie. Please stop trying to turn Hollywood into video games. Like, if a game director can't look at games like Death Stranding and understand how Hideo Kojima does it, then they shouldn't be trying to make movie games.
I mean, some video games are doing well in Hollywood, but those are few and far between.
I mean, it's just that most of the best examples I can come up with, I still think would have just been better as a movie or a TV series. Like, even, for example, The Last of Us. Like, The Last of Us was considered very well done storytelling. And I do not think the gameplay added anything to it. Meanwhile, something like Death Stranding, the gameplay is very integral to the experience, even though it kind of is also just a movie with very limited controls. The controls are actually made part of the experience.
So it turns out that when you update
Well,
these
yes, Gabby,
mods, when you update these mods, the old version that you still have in the store remains, but is technically registered as different by the game. So I'm having to sell all of the used copies of the games I made, the custom games I made, because they are all considered different versions. It doesn't seem to happen with the new games, just the secondhand ones, but yeah. Or at least I haven't noticed that it's happening with the new ones. I have no idea what that is. I don't know what TLOU.
The Last of Us.
Oh. I mean, I just refuse to entertain that series on principle because they bought out the Game Awards. And that's just very wrong.
Okay, so I kind of wasn't paying attention, but do you remember the Telltale games and how they were so big for a couple of years?
Yes, I'm aware of them and their popularity for a while.
I don't know when they fell off, but like I remember when they first started taking off and I saw what it was. I had the same exact complaint that I do now. Like it just they were just making books or movies but utilizing the game space for it. And like on one hand, sure, you can do whatever you want with artistic mediums. I'm not actually going to gatekeep that. But on the other hand, unless you're trying to make a specific artistic message, it just strikes me as really inefficient and obnoxious to utilize one medium to make something that should clearly be in another medium.
I thoroughly disagree on that. Because, like, those kinds of games, they have brand... Like, if it's just a game where you're set in one path and you just do some QTEs here and there, yeah, I'll agree. But when it's one that has actual branching paths that go different ways, depending on what you choose, you can't really do that with a movie. Could you imagine going into a theater and just, all right, everybody, we're going to do a vote here. So we're going to pause the movie at various intervals. And if you want the path A, raise your left hand. If you want path B, raise your right hand. And we'll go that route. And we might have to swap out the discs to switch which
I'll
one
be
you
honest,
see.
that idea goes hard.
Honestly, yeah, that actually does sound fun, but
Clue did it. That.
I started saying it and then I'm like, okay, this actually does sound
God,
cool,
that
but
Okay. Here, I'll specify a little bit more. I took specific umbrage with. I don't know if Telltale Games was doing this or if it was the general zeitgeist of the audience that was really into it, but I took umbrage with how it was kind of being utilized in a way that it felt like a lot of people were being very forceful about what a superior kind of genre it is, when I would just look at it and I was like, so you've got a visual novel, cool. And I've enjoyed several visual novels, don't get me wrong, but in my eyes, a visual novel is just another way of doing a book. I don't think of them as games, I think of them as books. Like Doki Doki Panic, even though it has technical gameplay elements, it's still a book. Ace Attorney, just barely a puzzle game instead of a book. Like, the Ace Attorney games do the bare minimum to not just be a book.
and I quite disagree there, because, like, yes, it is possible to do, choose your own adventure books. But the gameplay medium gives a lot more flexibility there for that.
I will also say, to your credit, and just as a clarification to everyone, I am 100% an art snob. I at this point, I have learned that I am just an art snob, and to an extent, I will have very aggressive opinions about art. And if we're trying to suggest that games can be artistic, I will get snobbish about it. You're right, Sergs. If I said Doki Doki Panic, I meant Doki Doki Literature Club or whatever it was.
Alright, we finally cleaned out all the old secondhand custom games. So now we can start stocking new stuff. Yay! Alright, old creepy dude, what do you got for me today?
Uh-huh.
I am happy to see that some of these repairs do have variation, like with the controllers and such. Though I also wish that they had a little bit more, or maybe that I needed to order the parts. What do you got? Oh. Well, thanks, but no thanks. Holy crap! You know what? This is the screenshot. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to go through all of these and just get everything stocked and then worry about it. Okay, so this is online store stuff. We have definitely ordered probably a lot more of this than I need to. Ow. What about the VC? Go ahead, Gib Gab. Your mic is weird right now.
Just noticed. Discord switched it back after I specifically switched it to my good mic. Thank you, Discord. I love Discord. Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, look,
I blame Windows.
nah, that's Discord's fault. I would blame Windows, but I didn't even set it to the default. It was Discord's problem. Then, okay, I have my, like, hot take of the day, okay? This is my random hot take after reading more about it, because I've been reading about it consistently the last couple of weeks. I actually don't think The Last of Us bought out the Game Awards. I have a very simple opinion on exactly what happened, which is really stupid, but and probably more likely, in my opinion. I think it was just...
more likely than them buying it out.
Yeah, I think it was just a hype thing, and the game wasn't really that good, and people realized it later. My main point to it is that like we haven't really seen much evidence of them buying out the Game Awards, like no firm reporting that I've been able to see, which is weird because if they bought out the Empire Awards, I think it'd be really obvious.
I mean,
Like,
it
somebody
kind
would
of
have said
was,
something.
because they got so many awards that should have, like, I'm okay with them getting a lot of rewards, but not basically all of them, which is
They got
what
7
happened.
awards. They got 7, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong. Like that's the most anyone has ever won. But it's quote unquote only 7. Like they didn't win, for example, best art direction, which is something I would have thought they would win. That went to Ghost of Tsushima. Best score in music, that went to Final Fantasy VII, the remake. The primary ones they won were pretty much what you'd expect. Best performance for Laura Bailey. They won best narrative, best game direction. Okay, I can understand those because it's kind of like a quote-unquote artistic gaming. They won the best action adventure game, which like they had very firm competition. So that one was like I could easily see them not winning it, but also like if they already won Game of the Year, I can understand why they'd win the game in their own category. Innovation and accessibility, admittedly, I don't really know what they did for it. It's just one of those awards that's just kind of there.
There were other games that should have definitely gone to. I do not remember which ones at this point because, well, that was years ago, but...
So the nominations were The Last of Us 2, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Grounded, Hyperdot, and Watchdog Legions.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I get that there aren't like, you know, innovation and accessibility is one of those weird categories. Just like the competition, also I don't think was particularly fierce. It was just one of those categories, kind of thing. They probably just did something in their settings that were like, oh wow, that's really cool. Yoink. Even if I think it's like a whatever kind of award for that purpose. It's a good category to have, but.
Like, okay.
My particular point to it is not that like I think it was deserved that they won. I just think a lot of it can be largely explained with hype. Because I was also looking at a lot of the other awards they won, and they won a lot of other awards, including ones that were like fan voted awards. Like seriously dominant in those, like, alright, we'll let the viewers vote. And then they won a ton of those too. And like, if you want to trace the money, okay, Naughty Dog spent $1 gazillion to get themselves their best voted, most awarded game. And nobody cared in the end. And like, who wins in the end? Because their competition was another company that was owned by PlayStation anyway. Like, Sony owns basically half of the games that showed up in the nominations. So like, Sony doesn't win. Sony doesn't care if Ghost of Tsushima or if freaking Last of Us 2 wins. Because it's Sony. They win anyway. At most, it's like a prestige thing for Naughty Dog. But also they fell off, so like...
What
So,
do you-
first of all, I want to key in on... Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, what do you have to say on this, Raijin?
First, I want to key in on the point that you said. Like, you were saying that afterwards people realize that it's not a great game. And to me, it's like, I know there was a lot of controversial stuff going on around at that time, including a lot of people that were arguing things in very bad faith. But I really feel like for quite a while now within the gaming space, it has been impossible to criticize any game whatsoever, even if your criticisms are extremely valid. And it's not even like a since COVID thing, because I experienced this all the way back with the release of Dark Souls. I had very valid criticisms about Dark Souls that I was pointing out early on, and people were just like being like, "Ha ha ha, get good, scrub." It's like I beat Dark Souls quite effortlessly, actually. It compared to some of the masocore platforming games I was playing, I wouldn't really even consider Dark Souls that hard. I understand that as an entry-level game, it's extremely difficult and it's meant to be infuriating. But it had a lot of very legitimate flaws that could not be criticized because of the rabid fan base. And you experience this a lot with Nintendo games too. For a long time, it has been very difficult to actually criticize Zelda games because people would just like defend Nintendo with their fucking lives. I swear to God. But Zelda has had very serious issues for a long time now, culminating in whatever Tears of the Kingdom was. The fucking Gary's mod of Zelda games. But second of all, best action adventure game, here's the list of nominees for you. The Last of Us Part 2, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ghosts of Tsushima, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Spider-Man Miles Morales, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I'll be honest, I am very much biased against The Last of Us, so I'm going to be throwing it some shade when I summarize this, but the gameplay of The Last of Us 2 can be summarized as walk around in a pretty world, do QTE events, and occasionally shoot people in the head.
I haven't played the Ori games because they're not my jam. But I know, I have seen them, I have watched them be played. I know that those games are top notch. That should have been the one to take it.
My point to that is not that you're wrong. It's just that,
I mean,
like,
I am a rabid Ori fan, but I wasn't even... Go ahead, Gabby.
no, go ahead, because I'm gonna launch into the response to it after.
So, I'm a rabid Ori fan, and I wasn't going to touch on that because I know I'm biased with that. I genuinely think that in terms of platformer games, Ori was downright transformative to the genre, to an extent almost as much as Celeste is. Celeste gets credited for so many gameplay mechanics within platformers that Celeste didn't even invent, because Celeste is considered so good. And Ori has done so much for platformers that it probably isn't even getting credited for. But just within the specific narrow cage of what an action-adventure game is, if you think The Last of Us 2 is a good story, fine. I'm not going to argue that. I think it could have been improved, but it wasn't for me. I know I'm going to be biased on that part. But to call it a good game, to look at its gameplay elements and be like, yes, this is an enjoyable game to play with my fingers, I think is really... it's a very easy criticism to make that should be acceptable. And sometimes you have games that suck to play but are still very enjoyable. They should not win awards for the best of their genre when they're up against Ghosts of Tsushima and Ori and Star Wars Jedi and Spider-Man.
So you're not
Honestly,
wrong.
I would have been okay with any of the others getting that. That was the problem, is that it was up against some really strong contenders for this. And yet it still won, and you tell me that they didn't buy it out?
I mean, yeah. Here's my genuine belief on this, right? Do you know who votes in the Game Awards?
Rich people.
No.
Not all rewards, but...
No. What they have is a very large selection of jury. Like, their jury pool is large. And it's primarily content creators, game journalists, and people who do video game content stuff. Which you know, I've defended games journalists in the past, but you and I can agree, in terms of their taste in video games, they are the bottom of the barrel. Their average experience is playing a game for 3 hours and then writing a review on it and then dropping it because they need to make 10 more reviews. So, for one, to believe that Naughty Dog's, not Sony even, probably Naughty Dog more than anyone, because again, Sony doesn't care if Ghost of Tsushima or The Last of Us 2 wins. So we're going to presume here it's going to be Naughty Dog specifically. To presume they paid off probably a few hundred people, or at least like around half of the voter pool, without anyone spilling the beans. And just for the purpose of winning over, you know, some honestly awards that are kind of pointless, considering that, mind you, The Last of Us 2 has won a ton of awards. These are not the only awards they've won. They've won a shit ton of other awards. So they paid to win a couple of specific categories because that's my main point of contention. I don't think it was them paying to win it. I think they just had a bunch of really stupid people in charge of the winning selection, and they went like, oh, you know what? I played a few hours of The Last of Us 2, and it was really pretty and really touching, and the guitar was very emotional, and the actors had very good performances, and like, I like it. I think it's the best category. I played The Last Jedi, or I played Fallen Order, and I died 15 times in the tutorial, and I don't understand this game, so it was bad. Guaranteed, that was at least a quarter of the jury pool. So like,
Huh. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
mind you, also, if you want to be more specific, 10% of the vote is also viewer determined, so like, I'd be curious to see what the specific breakdown for it is. But basically, I don't think it was them paying off a bunch of people. Literally like dozens of people. I genuinely think it was just reviewer brain going, you know, reviewer brain, and they were really stupid.
Okay, it says I have that game in stock, but I apparently do not. Okay, we'll give you a similar game. Survival. Got it.
Good night, Merle.
Good night, Merle.
Huh. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. It's just been grating at me that like that's a thing that keeps being argued about, and the more I look into it, the more it just seems like it was just them giving the vote to people who aren't good at deciding what a good video game is. Which, like, you can find all sorts of weird awards in the Game Awards, people just don't really pay attention to them. I think The Last of Us 2 just particularly got a lot of hate because of the number of awards. But I think a few of those awards, like, make sense within the reviewer brain. Where it's like, yeah, I can understand why they gave a bunch of these awards to this game. Like, best performance. It's a very quote-unquote cinematic game. And you know how, like, games journalists and reviewers are. They see a game that looks like what they might consider high art, and they want to praise it. So they don't consider something like Doom Eternal to have really good, like, performances, because in this other game, this other person gives a really dramatic, like, you know, performance that is fancy.
Journalists need to be abolished.
Pretty much. And I think the bigger point is not that Naughty Dog, but at the Video Game Awards. I think the broader point should be that, like, the Game Awards is bad at deciding what a good video game is. It's largely hype and largely games with big budgets that make it there. And to a degree, it's actually one of the big issues I have with something like the Steam Awards, where I can understand the point of it, and I don't mind it because it's not, like, a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But it's where, like, I hate that Elden Ring wins, because I hate Elden Ring with a burning passion for being Elden Ring. Yeah. So yeah.
there's a lot I will criticize Elden Ring for personally, but goddamn, does it have some amazing artistic direction?
Okay.
Yes. But I still
I need to get like some Elden Ring art books or something.
I personally really appreciate the Steam Awards being entirely player-based, though.
Okay.
Huh.
See,
Like,
that's
yeah,
where
there's some issues with that. Absolutely. But overall, I
I guess
think
you could
that's
say
a better way to do
Zim
it.
loves democracy.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
Huh.
But no, like you're right. Like I think there's a spot in media for like just a full-on popularity contest. I don't think that that's a bad thing to have inherently. It's just that like if you're gonna tell me that the Steam Awards are how we determine what a good game is, no. A good chunk of the time is just how we determine how much a game sold and how much people who bought it generally liked it. There's a lot of games you could easily give a lot of those awards to, and it's very clear it's just games that make it big and are good that get those awards. You barely ever see really niche indie games that like, you know, are good, but they don't get that kind of popular acclaim. Which, to a degree, should be what something like the Game Awards is really good at. Like, they should have a ton of awards, and they should allow, you know, all sorts of smaller independent game reviews and journalists or small game journalist outlets that take themselves seriously, that aren't just putting out review slop. You know, the kind of reviewers who will put out like one game review a month because they do it like out of passion and on their own time. And they're super connected in the games industry, but it's like a very passion thing for them. And they have this like intimate knowledge of, I don't know, the simulator game genre, and they will tell you half of the simulator games that release by memory because they played all of them. That kind of person probably has a very good opinion on like, or at least a very interesting opinion on simulator games. But then you're gonna tell me that, mind you, was it in this year? Or was it in 2020? In one of the years, fucking Age of Empires 4 won that award, and I was so ticked off about it when I read it. It was like, no. I'd rather Microsoft Flight Simulator win the award than Age of Empires 4. Fuck off!
Okay.
That game was a disaster. Who in their right mind would ever give that game an award? But it won. Nobody complains about it, but it won. I complain about it.
I mean, I
yeah,
talked with... I asked Tal about it, and he said that it was actually a decent one.
I think it was bad. It might have fixed it in the meantime. But, I mean, in 2021, on basically release,
Somebody gifted it to me over Christmas, and I literally asked Tal, I was like, hey, so is this actually good? Or should I just refund, or, you know, send it back to him to be refunded? And he told me it was good, so...
I mean, again, I'm not sure how it's changed. I just remember when I played it on release, it was kind of a disaster. I dropped it so fast.
Bye-bye.
So, I mean, it might be good at this point, but gosh.
See you later.
So yeah, I don't know. That's just my broader point. I do think genuinely it becomes a little conspiratorial to say Naughty Dog paid a shit ton of money to win like 3 or 4 awards that everyone's now complaining about. Because, like, I'm also sure they must have expected at some point, if they just paid off however many dozens of people, that somebody would blab about it. But we don't see anyone having blabbed about it, really, as far as I know. If there is, like, I'd love to see it. If someone sees this and they have, like, oh, here's a really good article on this, I'd love to see it.
Well,
something, like, properly sourced.
I also want to point out that while these are a lot of votes, there's another thing to consider here. How many people do you think are involved in the actual process of going, okay, these are all the votes that came in, and they all said this. I'm pretty sure there's just one person involved in that.
Admittedly, I'm not too sure. But also, if there was a big disparity in terms of how people voted and who won, I'm sure people would have genuinely talked about it. The people who voted themselves, they would have been like, wait, how did this win? I talked to like X, Y, and Z and we all voted for this game, and like we started tallying up some votes and this doesn't make sense. And
I
mind you,
mean, if they've got
they're-
1,000 people voting, or hundreds, or whatever amount it is, you know, they can't all talk to each other and be like, yeah, this is definitely what happened.
not
We all
entirely.
voted this way.
Yeah, not entirely. But remember, some of these people are journalists. And if you're going to tell me you're going to deliberately, bold-facedly take what a bunch of journalists, not just game journalists, man, there are some real journalists in there. A bunch of these people who are very nosy, very annoying, do this for a job, and you're telling them like, oh yeah, we totally ignored your vote and just did whatever Sony paid us to do. I mean, considering how many people have talked about it, surely at least a couple of these people must have investigated what could easily be one of the biggest stories of like the year.
Or they just didn't bother with it because that's always a thing with anything involving voting.
They might not have. You're entirely right. It's just I also just haven't seen any
And
evidence.
a lot of them, as we've kind of established, you know, they play the game for an hour, give their review, and move on to the next one. You think they really care about whether the game they voted for won?
I'm sure there's at least a couple of them that must have at least
A
asked some questions.
couple out of hundreds.
Yeah, but also, like I said, these are journalists. They are the most annoying people on the planet.
But still,
the
a
kind of
couple
people who-
out of hundreds.
And mind you, that's also like assuming that, because again, we also just kind of don't know. I would love to see them actually like publicize their tallies. Like I want to see. I would genuinely be curious for them to release who voted for what, because that would be the most transparent way to do it, right? Like you could say like, oh, these outlets, these people voted for this, this, and that, and this
Yes.
is how it happened this year. Because then we would get to fully verify it. I don't think they do, and I don't think they're gonna, as far as I know.
Oh, they're definitely not going to do that.
I'd hope they do, but even then, like,
Well, part
It's
of the problem of them doing that is then you get into the problem of you're opening those journalists up to harassment from, or those voters to harassment from people that don't like how they voted. I mean,
sure.
again, look at the, I know if I were involved in that vote, I would not want my opinions known because, good God, fans are aggressive and bloodthirsty.
sure. But then, like, here's a hot take that I genuinely have on this. If you are going to accept the response, how Octo?
Hey, Octo.
Like, okay, I do think if you're having the responsibility of having the vote for like Game of the Year award, right? And I mean, it's not like these people hide their opinions. Like these people already publicize their reviews. I do understand like the point on the harassment, but also I mean they already pretty
And
much get
either
harassed constantly.
way, they are just a small subset of the number of people that are voting.
Hmm?
There's only like these people that have posted are just a small subset.
Oh, they're most of the votes, from what I understand, go to like media outlets, game reviewers. Like they go to people who mostly post this kind of stuff. There might be like some who are just kind of like insider connection kind of people, or just like quiet critics, but I'm pretty sure most of these go to people who in some way or another post stuff, basically. I know there's like some like just straight up some content creators that get votes. Don't really know who they are, but I know there's like at least a couple like YouTubers who are just like, yeah, they get votes. Partly because I was reading about this one really stuck-up game journalist who was complaining that a YouTuber would get a vote just as he does, even though he's a distinguished game journalist. Which was the most arrogant thing I'd read all day, and it was really funny.
So yeah, hi Octo. We're debating about how the Last of Us 2 bought out the votes on the Game Awards that 1 year again.
Oh.
Yeah, I kind of just don't think they did. I think it was just a bunch of reviewers lemon training into the same vote. Like, you would have a much stronger point if they hadn't won a shit ton of awards. Like, if they had only won them in the Game Awards, it would probably be much more likely. But, like, you go to the Wikipedia page and look at how many awards they won, and it just lists right there, like, 326 Game of the Year awards. Which, even if you have half of the amount, because you assume half of them are just, like, whatever, nothing burgers, just fuck, make it a quarter. That's still, like, 90 awards. Multiple of them fully, like, fan voted for. Not just reviewers, like, a lot of them are fan voted for. It had its, like, critical acclaim and fan base liking it, and then after that, I think, is when it started losing that, like, people look back on it and were like, yeah, eh. Just, I don't know. Don't make sense to me that much. Look, I am having my mouth. I have been looking into this far too long, and all I've seen is just people complaining, and then when they get asked for a source, they're like, it's common sense. It's common sense that a game that won a shit ton of game awards, and won a shit ton of, like, fan votes, and critic votes, won the game awards. I mean, I think it's overrated. I think it was overhyped. It just doesn't seem like a very strong conspiracy at face value.
Okay, Gabby.
Hmm?
So, if you agree that it was overhyped, then would you agree with the possibility that they started out by buying out some journalists and buying out some good reviews to generate that good hype that then got carried into a general player base, especially one that doesn't have a refined enough taste to really dig into the number of games that are possible to consider within a year?
Yes.
Because one of the problems here is that for some people, it's like 1 or 2 games that they play a year. They hear about Last of Us 2 because that's already hyped up. They play it, they think it's good, they vote for it. They don't have the frame of reference of other things to critically address it.
Mm-hmm. I don't even disagree entirely with that
Ergo,
assertion.
they vote for it to get rewards too.
I don't disagree with that assertion, because, like, you're probably right, but I don't even think that's like, I'm pretty sure half of the games on the Game Awards all did that. It's just there's likely just some element of, like, things falling in the right place at the right time, or people just managed to connect a little more with The Last of Us 2 to generate that hype. Like, in terms of, like, the people, the critics reviewing it, that were like, oh yeah, I'm getting paid, but also I kind of like this. This is pretty good. Anyway, next game. And let's be real. Same as how people often don't have the capability to critically digest this. I'm sure a lot of those reviewers don't, especially in terms of how you put it. Like, a lot of them might go like, wow, this is a really nice story. It has nice music and nice visuals. But in terms of being a game, it sucks. And I'm sure a lot of those critics aren't good at judging that in particular. But they can tell you what's a very good, like, a narrative performance. They can be like, yeah, this like voice actor or this, like, motion capture artist killed it. How dare him? You're stinky.
Yes, Era. Yes, he is.
Look, it's not so much a crash out. Okay, it's kind of a crash out, but I'm just I think the specific criticism levied of it genuinely is just a little unwarranted. Like, when you complain about something like this, you also kind of extend the same complaints to a lot of previous or current Game Award winners. And for lack of a better term, I just don't think it's anything like special or specific they did. I think they just also happened to win more awards that year than people were comfortable with. If they had won like 2 less awards and it had been like whatever awards and they had quote unquote only won 5 awards, people would have cared significantly less. Even if they had only not won like 2 of the awards that are more pointless. It just largely comes down to like it's a big target, it's really easy, there's a lot of conspiratorial thinking around it, and then people stop caring about the Game Awards later because everything is money in there. And mind you, from what I read, they even after that year did change some of the voting like system a little bit to avoid this repeating again because it looked bad that one game won 7 awards in one go when it clearly in hindsight ended up not really deserving it. And then Expedition 33 won 7 awards. 8 awards, yes. Which is only 1 less than The Last of Us 2. But you know, nobody complains. Nyeh. That's my hill to die on.
So anyway, The Wandering Inn is actually surprisingly quite enjoyable. If anyone wants to get into a 14 million word book, it's all right. There's a couple of problems, but
Mala, your opinion is irrelevant because you're you. Go away. Also, they were competing with like Silk Song and Hades too. Not like they didn't have.
imagine the state of gaming that a French game is considered one of the best games released this year.
I mean, it's better than a British game at least. Now, you know what my favorite part about the Game Awards this year was upon looking at the awards closer? When they were doing the... I hate using.
I made it better.
If you look at the best adaptation for, like, you know, video game to movie, in this case to series, you have some interesting, like, so The Last of Us Season 2 won, obviously. But there was some competition. They had Devil May Cry, Splinter Cell Deathwatch, Until Dawn. A Minecraft movie was one of the runner-ups.
Alright, I am going to swap games here. So, thank you everybody for joining us so far on the stream today. That was Console Shop Simulator. Check out our website, zgfgaming.com. We've got links for our Discord, Telegram, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Patreon, and more. There on the website as well as down in the description below through our link tree. Thank you to my patrons, tippers, and subscribers. It is your support that keeps this channel alive and going. I cannot do this without your guys' help and your support, so thank you. Consider becoming a patron over at patreon.com/zgfgaming. It's one of the best ways to help out the channel, though you can also do so by commissioning one of the artists that I manage for. Their details are at zgf.art, picking up packs of cards to stream loots, or just coming by and hanging out. But for now, thank you so much for joining, everybody, and I bid you all the most fondest adieu.
Oh boy.